The hospital waiting room smelled like disinfectant and cold coffee, and Zachary Zimmerman had been sitting in the same vinyl chair for 3 hours when the doctor finally called his name with news that would change everything he thought he knew about his future. Zachary followed Dr. Matthews down the sterile hallway, his expensive leather shoes clicking against the polished floor. At 32, he had built an empire in commercial real estate development, owned properties across 5 states, and had more money than he could spend in 3 lifetimes. But none of that mattered when Dr. Matthews closed the office door and gestured for him to sit down with an expression that made Zachary's stomach drop. "The tests came back," Dr. Matthews said, settling into his chair. "I'm afraid it's what we suspected. You have a rare cardiac condition called restrictive cardiomyopathy. Your heart muscle is becoming increasingly rigid, which means it can't fill properly with blood between beats." Zachary gripped the armrests. "What does that mean? Treatment options?" "We can manage it with medication and lifestyle changes, but I need you to understand the seriousness. This condition is progressive. With treatment, you could have years, potentially decades if we're aggressive and you're fortunate, but there's no cure and eventually." "Doctor." Matthews trailed off, but Zachary understood. "How long without treatment? Don't think like that. We're going to fight this." Dr. Matthews leaned forward. "But I need you to reduce stress dramatically. No more 16-hour workdays. You need to step back from your business, delegate more, and focus on living, not just working." Zachary walked out of that office an hour later with a prescription bottle in his pocket and a weight on his chest that had nothing to do with his failing heart. He sat in his Mercedes in the parking garage and stared at nothing, wondering how his life had become so full of everything except what actually mattered. 3 weeks later, Zachary found himself standing outside a small pottery studio in downtown Portland, Oregon, a city he had flown to for what was supposed to be a quick property acquisition meeting. The meeting had ended early, and he had hours before his flight back to Seattle. He had been walking aimlessly, trying to clear his head, when the colorful window display caught his attention. Through the glass, he could see shelves lined with handmade mugs, bowls, and vases in brilliant blues and greens. But what really caught his attention was the woman at the pottery wheel in the corner, her dark hair pulled back in a messy bun, her hands covered in wet clay as she shaped what looked like a large bowl. She was so focused she didn't notice him watching. Zachary pushed open the door, and a small bell chimed. The woman looked up, and he found himself staring into the warmest brown eyes he had ever seen. She smiled, and it was genuine, reaching all the way to those eyes in a way that made something in his chest ache that had nothing to do with his diagnosis. "Welcome," she said, standing up and reaching for a towel to wipe her hands. "Feel free to look around. Everything here is handmade in the studio." "You made all of this?" Zachary asked, looking around at the impressive collection. "Most of it. I teach classes too, so some pieces are from my students." She walked over, extending a now clean hand. "I'm Zara Zimmerman. Well, Zara Zeller, technically. Zimmerman is just the studio name. Long story." Zachary shook her hand, caught off guard by the coincidence of their last names. "Zachary Roth." "Nice to meet you, Zachary. Are you looking for anything specific or just browsing?" He should have said he was just browsing. Should have bought a mug, made small talk, and left. But something about the peaceful atmosphere of the studio, the way Zara's smile seemed to light up the entire space, made him say something completely different. "Actually, I was wondering if you offer private lessons." Zara's eyebrows rose slightly. "I do, though most people start with the group classes. Have you worked with clay before?" "Never. But I find myself with more free time than I'm used to, and this looks—" He searched for the right word, his eyes drifting to the wheel where the half-formed bowl still sat. Meditative. It can be, Zara agreed. It can also be frustrating, messy, and humbling. But yes, when you get into the rhythm of it, there's nothing quite like it. She walked over to a desk in the corner and pulled out a scheduling book. I have an opening tomorrow evening at 6 if that works for you. I'm flying back to Seattle tonight. Oh. Zara's face fell slightly, and Zachary felt an unexpected pang of disappointment. Well, if you're ever back in Portland. What about next week? The words came out before Zachary could stop them. I could come back next week. Zara studied him for a moment, and Zachary realized how that must sound. A stranger offering to fly to another city for a pottery lesson. But instead of looking concerned, Zara just smiled again. That would work. Thursday at 6. Thursday at 6, Zachary confirmed. He bought a blue-green mug before he left, one that Zara said she had made herself. On the flight back to Seattle, he held it carefully in his lap, wondering what exactly he was doing. He had a company to run, even if the doctor had told him to step back. He had a diagnosis he was still processing. He had no business flying to Portland for pottery lessons from a woman he had just met. But when Thursday came, Zachary found himself on a plane to Portland anyway. Zara was setting up the studio when he arrived, pulling out tools and wedging clay at a large table. She wore jeans with clay stains on the thighs, and an oversized button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled up. Her hair was in the same messy bun as before, and she greeted him with that same warm smile that made his heart do something his cardiologist probably wouldn't approve of. "You actually came," she said, sounding genuinely pleased. "I wasn't sure if you would." "I don't say things I don't mean," Zachary replied, setting down his bag. "Good to know." Zara gestured to the wedging table. "Come here first. Before you can throw on the wheel, you need to understand the clay." For the next hour, Zara taught him how to wedge clay, explaining that it removed air bubbles and created an even consistency. Her hands demonstrated the rhythmic motion, pushing and folding, and when it was Zachary's turn, she stood beside him, occasionally reaching over to adjust his grip or technique. "You're thinking too much," she said at one point. "I can see it in your shoulders. You're all tense." "I'm usually thinking," Zachary admitted. "It's hard to turn off. That's exactly why you need this." Zara placed her hands over his, guiding the motion. "Feel it, don't think it." Something about her touch, her voice, made the tension in Zachary's shoulders ease. For the first time in weeks, the constant anxiety about his diagnosis, about his mortality, about all the things he had never done and might never do, faded into the background. By the end of the lesson, Zachary had managed to center clay on the wheel and pull up the walls of a very lopsided bowl. Zara assured him it was impressive for a first attempt, though the way she bit her lip suggested she might be being generous. "Same time next week?" she asked as he was leaving. "Definitely." It became a routine. Every Thursday, Zachary flew to Portland for his lesson with Zara. He told his assistant it was for business meetings, checking on potential properties in the area. But the truth was, those 2 hours in the pottery studio became the highlight of his week. Over the following weeks, as the lessons continued, they began to talk more. Zara told him about how she had started the studio 5 years ago, after leaving a corporate job in marketing that had been slowly crushing her soul. She talked about her family, her parents who lived in Eugene and worried that she would never get a real job, her younger brother who was in medical school and was apparently the pride of the family. Zachary found himself opening up too, though he was careful about what he shared. He told her he worked in real estate, though he downplayed the extent of his company. He told her about growing up in Seattle, about his own parents who had passed away when he was in his 20s, about the loneliness of building an empire with no one to share it with. What he didn't tell her was about the diagnosis, about the pills he took every morning, about the way his doctor had warned him that stress was literally killing him, about the fact that every moment with her felt stolen from a future that was suddenly much more finite than he had ever imagined. 2 months into the lessons, as fall settled over Portland with its constant drizzle and golden leaves, Zachary showed up for his usual Thursday session to find Zara in the studio looking frustrated. "Everything okay?" he asked. Zara sighed, running a hand through her hair. "The kiln broke. The repair company can't come until next week, and I have 3 orders that need to be fired by Monday. I'm going to have to call around to other studios and see if anyone has space in their kiln. How much does a new kiln cost? Why, are you looking to take up kiln repair as a hobby too?" Zara asked with a small smile. "They're expensive. This one is old, it might be better to replace it entirely, but that's not in the budget right now." Zachary made a mental note. The next week, when he arrived for his lesson, there was a truck outside the studio. Zara stood on the sidewalk with her arms crossed, looking confused. "Zachary, did you do something?" she asked when she saw him approaching. "What do you mean?" "There are delivery people inside installing a brand new kiln. They said it was already paid for, that it was arranged by someone named Roth." Zachary kept his expression neutral. "Huh, that's a coincidence." "Zachary." Zara turned to face him fully. "That's a $15,000 kiln." "Is it? I wouldn't know much about kiln prices." "You bought me a kiln." It wasn't a question. "I made some calls, asked what the best model was for a studio your size, and arranged delivery. Consider it an investment in my pottery education. Can't have lessons if you don't have a working kiln." Zara stared at him for a long moment. "Who are you?" "Just a guy who takes pottery lessons on Thursdays." "Just a guy who takes pottery lessons doesn't drop $15,000 on a kiln." Zachary realized he had made a mistake. He had gotten so comfortable with Zara, so lost in the simple pleasure of their time together, that he had forgotten she didn't know the full extent of his resources. He had wanted to help, had hated seeing her stressed, and hadn't thought about how the gesture would look. "I have some money," he said carefully. "My business does well, and you've given me more peace in the last 2 months than I've had in years. Let me do something nice for you." Zara's expression softened, but there was still something uncertain in her eyes. "You should have asked me first." "You're right, I'm sorry." They stood there on the sidewalk, the rain starting to fall in that soft Portland way, and Zachary realized how much he had come to care about this woman, about her opinion of him, about not screwing this up. "Thank you," Zara said finally. "It's incredibly generous. And you're right, I needed a new kiln. I don't want you to think you need to buy things. I like having you here teaching you, that's enough." "Noted," Zachary said, feeling relief wash through him. "No more surprise expensive pottery equipment. Good." Zara smiled. "Now come on, we have a lesson, and you still haven't managed to make a bowl that doesn't lean to one side." That night, after the lesson, Zara suggested they get dinner. It wasn't the first time they had grabbed food after a session, but something felt different about this invitation. They went to a small Thai restaurant around the corner, squeezed into a booth in the back, and talked for 3 hours. Somewhere between the pad Thai and the mango sticky rice, Zachary realized he was falling in love with Zara. It wasn't just her beauty, though she was beautiful in an effortless way that made his chest ache. It was the way she listened when he talked, really listened, asking thoughtful questions. The way she laughed at his jokes, even the bad ones. The way she saw the world with an optimism and creativity that made him want to be better. "Why aren't you married?" Zara asked at one point, and Zachary nearly choked on his water. "That's direct. Sorry, you don't have to answer." I just mean, you're successful, you're kind, you're not terrible looking. She grinned. Seems like someone would have snatched you up by now. I was married to my work, Zachary said. Spent my 20s and early 30s building the company. By the time I looked up, I realized I had no personal life to speak of. What about you? I was engaged once, Zara said, tracing patterns in the condensation on her water glass. About 6 years ago. He wanted me to give up pottery, said it was a phase I needed to get over so I could focus on my marketing career. When I told him I was quitting my job to open the studio, he gave me an ultimatum. Him or the clay. I'm guessing you chose the clay. Best decision I ever made. Zara looked up at him. I realized I would rather be alone doing what I love than with someone who doesn't respect what makes me happy. He was an idiot, Zachary said, the words coming out with more force than he intended. Zara's eyes widened slightly, and then she smiled. Yeah, he really was. Walking her back to her car later that night, Zachary felt the rain on his face and wondered how he had ended up here, in a city that wasn't his own, with a woman who made him forget about everything wrong in his life. Zara stopped at her car, an old Honda with a dent in the passenger door, and turned to face him. I really like our Thursdays, she said softly. Me too. Would you want to maybe do something on a non-Thursday? I mean, if you're going to be in Portland anyway. Zachary knew he should say no. Knew he was already in too deep. Knew that every moment he spent with her was another moment he was lying by omission about his diagnosis, about the uncertain timeline of his future. But looking at her standing there in the rain, hope in her eyes, he couldn't make himself say no. I would like that very much. Saturday. There's a food cart festival along the waterfront. Very Portland, very touristy, but also delicious. Saturday, Zachary agreed. He flew back to Seattle that night but returned to Portland Saturday morning. The food cart festival was crowded and chaotic, and Zachary found himself holding Zara's hand so they wouldn't get separated in the crowd. Or at least, that's what he told himself. The truth was, the moment his fingers intertwined with hers, he didn't want to let go. They ate Korean tacos and fresh donuts and drank coffee from a cart that served each cup with a tiny flower made of foam. They walked along the waterfront, talking and laughing, and Zachary felt younger than he had in years. Tell me something real, Zara said as they sat on a bench watching the river flow past. Something you don't usually tell people. Zachary's first thought was his diagnosis, the secret that sat heavy in his chest every moment of every day, but he couldn't tell her that, not yet, maybe not ever. So instead, he said, I'm afraid I've wasted my life building something that doesn't matter. Zara was quiet for a moment. What would matter? This, Zachary said, gesturing between them. Connection, love, experiences. I have all this money, all this success, and most nights I eat dinner alone in an apartment that cost more than most people's houses. I can't remember the last time I felt genuinely happy before I walked into your studio. Zara squeezed his hand. It's not too late to change that. But that was the problem, Zachary thought. It might be exactly too late. The weeks blurred together in a way that was both wonderful and terrifying. Zachary found himself spending more and more time in Portland. He kept an apartment in Seattle but started staying in Portland for longer stretches, telling his assistant to handle more of the day-to-day operations. His business partner, Marcus, called him every few days asking if everything was okay, if he was sick, if there was something wrong. I'm fine, Zachary would say. Just finally taking your advice about work-life balance. He wasn't fine, not really. The medication helped, but he could feel the changes in his body. He got tired more easily. Sometimes his heart would beat irregularly, and he would have to sit down and breathe deeply until it passed. He saw Dr. Matthews every 2 weeks, and the news was never great but also never catastrophic. Stable, the doctor would say, as long as we keep you stable. But Zara made him feel more than stable. She made him feel alive. Their relationship shifted naturally from friendship to something more. The first time Zachary kissed her, they were in her studio late on a Thursday night. The lesson had run long, and they had been laughing about the truly terrible vase Zachary had created, which looked more like an abstract sculpture of melting ice cream than functional pottery. "I think you might be my worst student ever," Zara teased. "I think you might be a terrible teacher," Zachary shot back. "Excuse me," Zara gasped in mock offense. "I am an excellent teacher. You're just unteachable. Prove it. Teach me something else." "Like what?" Zachary stepped closer. "I don't know. Surprise me." Zara looked up at him, and something in the air between them shifted. Her breath caught, and Zachary slowly, carefully, giving her every opportunity to step back, leaned down and kissed her. She tasted like the coffee they had been drinking, and something sweet he couldn't quite place. Her hands came up to rest against his chest, and Zachary wrapped his arms around her waist, pulling her closer. The kiss deepened, and for those perfect moments, nothing else existed except the two of them. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Zara smiled. "You're a much better student at that." After that night, they were inseparable. Zachary officially moved most of his operations to Portland, renting a house in the hills with a view of the city. Zara spent nights there, and Zachary spent nights at her small apartment above a coffee shop downtown. They fell into a rhythm that felt natural and right in a way nothing else in Zachary's life ever had. Zara took him to her favorite spots around Portland. Powell's bookstore, where they spent an entire Saturday getting lost in the stacks. The Japanese gardens, where they walked hand in hand through carefully manicured landscapes. Food carts she had been going to for years. Zachary took her to nice restaurants, to concerts, to a weekend trip to the coast where they stayed in a bed and breakfast and walked on the beach for hours. "Tell me about your business," Zara said one night as they lay tangled together in Zachary's bed, the city lights twinkling below. "What do you want to know?" "I don't know. What exactly do you do? You've always been vague about it." Zachary hesitated. This felt like the moment to tell her the full truth about the extent of his wealth, about the company that bore his name and developed properties across multiple states. But he was also afraid it would change how she saw him, afraid she would think he had been lying to her. "I develop commercial properties," he said finally. "Buy land, build shopping centers, office buildings, that kind of thing." "Is it successful?" "Very." "How successful?" Zachary turned to face her. "Why does it matter?" "It doesn't, not really. I just want to know you, all of you. Sometimes I feel like you're holding back." She had no idea how right she was. "The company is worth a lot, more than a lot. I'm what people would call very wealthy." Zara propped herself up on one elbow. "How wealthy?" "The kind of wealthy that makes the kiln seem like pocket change." "Oh," Zara processed this. "How much more than pocket change?" "I have properties in 5 states. The company is valued at around $800 million. Personally, I'm worth probably half that with investments and other assets." Zara sat up fully now. "You're a millionaire." "Multiple times over, yes. And you didn't think to mention this. Would it have changed anything? I don't know. Maybe. I mean, no, not really, but—" Zara ran a hand through her hair. "That's a pretty big thing to just not mention." "I didn't mention it because it's not who I am. It's what I have. There's a difference." Zachary sat up too. "Every time I've told people about the money, it changes things. They treat me differently. They want things from me. I just wanted someone to see me for me." Zara was quiet for a long moment. "I get that. And for the record, it doesn't change anything. You're still the guy who makes lopsided bowls and once ate 7 Korean tacos because you were too polite to tell me you were full." Zachary laughed, relief flooding through him. "They were really good tacos." "They were." Zara kissed him softly. "Thank you for telling me." As she settled back against his chest, Zachary felt the weight of his other secret pressing on him. If she deserved to know about his wealth, she definitely deserved to know about his diagnosis. But he couldn't make himself say the words. Not yet. Not when things were so good. 4 months into their relationship, Zara introduced Zachary to her family. They drove down to Eugene on a Saturday morning, and Zachary found himself more nervous than he had been before major business deals. "They're going to love you," Zara assured him. "You don't know that. I know them. And I know you, trust me." Zara's parents, Linda and Tom Zeller, lived in a modest house with a garden that Tom was clearly proud of. Her brother, Jake, was home from medical school for the weekend. They welcomed Zachary warmly, though Linda gave him an assessing look that suggested she was taking his measure. Over lunch, Tom asked about Zachary's work, and Zachary found himself giving a more honest account than he usually did, talking about the satisfaction of seeing empty land transform into spaces where people worked and shopped and lived their lives. "And how did you meet our daughter?" Linda asked. "I walked into her studio one day and asked for lessons," Zachary said, smiling at Zara. "Best decision I ever made, even though I'm still terrible at pottery." "He really is," Zara agreed, "but he's persistent." After lunch, Jake pulled Zachary aside on the pretext of showing him the garden. Once they were outside, Jake's friendly demeanor shifted slightly. "I'm going to be direct with you," Jake said. "Zara is my big sister and I love her. Her last relationship ended badly and it took her a long time to recover. If you're not serious about her, now's the time to bow out gracefully." Zachary appreciated the directness. "I'm serious, more serious than I've ever been about anything." "Good." Jake studied him for a moment. "She seems happy, happier than I've seen her in years, so thank you for that." "She makes me happy too, happier than I knew I could be." On the drive back to Portland, Zara reached over and took Zachary's hand. "That went well. Your brother threatened me." "Oh, that's how you know he likes you. If he didn't care, he wouldn't bother." Zachary brought her hand to his lips and kissed it. "I love you." The words came out without planning, but they were true. Truer than anything Zachary had ever said. Zara's breath caught. "Say that again." "I love you, Zara. Pull over." "What?" "Pull over the car, right now." Zachary found a safe spot and pulled onto the shoulder. Before he could say anything else, Zara had unbuckled her seatbelt and was kissing him with an intensity that made his heart race in both the best and worst ways. "I love you too," she said against his lips. "I've loved you for weeks, but was afraid to say it first." They sat there on the side of the highway, kissing and laughing and saying, "I love you," over and over like the words were magic spells that could protect them from anything. If only that were true. The holidays approached, and Zachary felt time slipping through his fingers like sand. He was managing the symptoms with medication, but his last appointment with Dr. Matthews had been concerning. The doctor had noticed signs of progression and wanted to discuss more aggressive treatment options, possibly even considering a transplant list. "You need to tell her, doctor," Matthews had said. "This is serious, Zachary. You can't keep hiding this from someone you love." "I know," Zachary had replied, but knowing and doing were different things. He planned to tell her. He made plans a dozen times. He would sit her down after dinner, or during one of their morning walks, or late at night when they were alone. But every time he would look at her face, see her smile, hear her laugh, and the words would die in his throat. How could he tell her that their time together might be measured in years instead of decades? How could he put that burden on her? Christmas came, and Zachary gave Zara a key to his house. She gave him a set of pottery she had made specifically for him, plates, bowls, and mugs in deep blues and greens that reminded him of the ocean. "I love them," he said, holding one of the mugs carefully. "They're perfect. I wanted you to have something I made. Since you're still working on making things yourself that don't collapse. I made that vase last week that only partially collapsed." "Progress," Zara laughed. They spent New Year's Eve together at Zachary's house, just the two of them, watching the fireworks over the city. At midnight, as they kissed, Zachary made a silent resolution to tell her about the diagnosis. After the holidays, when things calmed down, he would sit her down and tell her everything. But January brought a new complication. Zara started talking about the future. About maybe moving in together officially. About what it might look like to merge their lives more completely. "I know we haven't been together that long," she said one evening as they cooked dinner together in his kitchen. "But it feels right, doesn't it? Like we're building toward something." "It does," Zachary agreed, his heart sinking. "I've been thinking. There's this amazing property that came up for sale near my studio. It's bigger, has a great space that could be expanded for more classes. I could probably get a loan, but it would stretch me pretty thin. I was wondering if maybe you might want to go in as a partner, not just financially but actually involved. We could build it together." Zachary looked at her shining eyes, the excitement in her voice, and felt his chest tighten. "That sounds amazing. Really, you'd consider it, of course." "Let's look at the property." They visited it the next week, and it was perfect. A large space with good light, room for multiple wheels and a bigger kiln area, an attached space that could be a showroom. Zara's excitement was contagious, and Zachary found himself caught up in her vision. "We could do this," Zara said, spinning in the empty space. "Can you see it? Classes every night, pieces displayed along this wall, maybe eventually offering residencies for other artists." "I can see it," Zachary said, and he could. He could see all of it so clearly. He just couldn't see himself in it for as long as Zara imagined. That night, Zachary finally made the decision to tell her. He couldn't keep building a future with her on a foundation of lies by omission. She deserved to know the truth, to make her own choices with full information. He invited her to his house for dinner, cooked her favorite meal, and poured wine. Zara sat across from him at the table, beautiful in the candlelight, talking about the new studio space and all her plans. "Zara," Zachary said, interrupting her mid-sentence, "I need to tell you something." Something in his tone made her stop. "Okay, that sounds serious." "It is. I should have told you a long time ago, and I'm sorry I didn't." Zara set down her wine glass. "You're kind of scaring me. I'm sick." The words came out blunt and raw. "I have a heart condition. A rare type of cardiomyopathy. I found out before I met you, and I've been managing it with medication, but it's progressive." The color drained from Zara's face. "What does that mean? Progressive?" "It means it gets worse over time. I'm doing everything I can, seeing the best doctors, taking all the medication, but eventually—" He couldn't finish the sentence. "Eventually what?" Zara's voice was sharp. "Eventually my heart will fail. I could have years, even decades with treatment, or it could be sooner. They don't know. Every case is different." Zara stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "How long have you known?" "About 8 months." 8 months? We've been together for almost 6 months, and you've known about this the entire time?" "Yes." "And you didn't think I deserved to know?" "Didn't think I had a right to know that the man I fell in love with is sick? I wanted to tell you. I tried to tell you so many times. But you didn't." Tears were streaming down Zara's face now. "You let me fall in love with you. You let me make plans for a future together. And all this time you knew that future might not happen." "I'm not dying tomorrow," Zachary said, standing too. The doctors are optimistic with treatment. This doesn't have to change everything. It changes everything. Zara's voice broke. Don't you understand? You lied to me. Every day, every conversation about the future, every plan we made, you were lying. I wasn't lying. I just wasn't telling you everything. That's the same thing, Zachary. That's exactly the same thing. They stood there in his dining room, the carefully prepared dinner going cold on the table, and Zachary watched his worst fear play out in real time. I'm sorry, he said. I'm so sorry. I was scared. I didn't want to lose you, so you lied instead. You thought that was better. I thought I was protecting you. From what? From making my own choices. From deciding if I wanted to be with someone who's sick. You took that choice away from me. Zara grabbed her bag from the chair. I need to go. I need to think. Zara, please, don't, just don't. She walked toward the door, then stopped and turned back. I loved you. I loved you so much. And you didn't trust me enough to tell me the truth. What does that say about us? She left, and Zachary stood in the empty house, the sound of the door closing echoing like a gunshot. The next week was the worst of Zachary's life. Zara wouldn't answer his calls or texts. He went by the studio, but she had someone else there teaching classes. Finally, her brother Jake called him. She needs space, Jake said. Give her time to process. I'm running out of time, Zachary said, the words coming out more desperate than he intended. Then you should have told her sooner. Jake's voice wasn't unkind, but it was firm. Look, I get it. Medical school has taught me that people react to diagnosis in all kinds of ways. But you can't make decisions for other people, especially people you claim to love. She deserved to know. I know that now. Good. Now give her space to figure out what she wants to do with that information. A week turned into 2. Zachary threw himself into work, but even the business that had once consumed his life felt hollow. His assistant commented that he seemed distracted. Marcus asked if things were okay with that woman in Portland. No, Zachary said. Things are decidedly not okay. On a Tuesday evening, 3 weeks after their fight, there was a knock on Zachary's door. He opened it to find Zara standing there, looking tired and sad but also determined. Can I come in? She asked. Zachary stepped aside, not trusting himself to speak. They sat in his living room, the space between them on the couch feeling like a canyon. I've been doing a lot of thinking, Zara said finally. And I talked to my brother, got some perspective from him about what you're dealing with medically. What did he say? That your diagnosis is serious, but manageable. That you could live a long life with proper treatment. That you're probably terrified and dealing with that fear in all kinds of maladaptive ways. That sounds like something a medical student would say. He's a good brother. Zara turned to face him fully. I'm still angry at you. You should have told me, I know. But I understand why you didn't. Fear makes us do stupid things, and keeping this secret was really, really stupid. I know that too. Here's the thing, though. I love you. I'm in love with you, and that doesn't just go away because you made a mistake, even a big one. But I need to know that there won't be more lies, no more secrets. If we're going to do this, we do it with complete honesty. Hope flared in Zachary's chest. We're doing this. You still want to be together. I want to be with you for however long we have. Whether that's 5 years or 50 years. But I need you to promise me. No more hiding things. If something changes with your health, if you're scared, if you're struggling, you tell me. We face it together. I promise. Zachary reached for her hand and she let him take it. I swear to you, no more secrets. I'll tell you everything. Everything includes medical appointments. I want to come with you, understand what we're dealing with. Okay. And we're going to live, Zachary, really live. Not hide away worrying about the future. We're going to make plans and have adventures and build that studio together, and we're not going to let this diagnosis define our relationship. I want that. I want all of that. Zara finally smiled, the first real smile he had seen from her in weeks. Good, because I already put an offer in on the property for the new studio. I figured we could use a project. Zachary laughed, pulling her closer. You put an offer in while we weren't even speaking. I told you I've been thinking. And one of the things I thought about was that I don't want to live my life in fear. Not of your diagnosis, not of getting hurt, not of anything. Life is too short to waste being afraid. When did you get so wise? I spend a lot of time alone with my thoughts while throwing pottery. It leads to insights. They sat there holding each other, and Zachary felt something he hadn't felt in weeks: peace. He had been so afraid that telling Zara the truth would destroy everything, but instead, it had made them stronger. True to her word, Zara came with him to his next appointment with Dr. Matthews. The doctor was surprised but pleased to meet her. It's good that he told you, Dr. Matthews said. Support system is incredibly important for managing chronic conditions. They discussed treatment options, medication adjustments, and lifestyle considerations. Zara asked intelligent questions and took notes. When Dr. Matthews mentioned the possibility of needing a transplant someday, she squeezed Zachary's hand but didn't flinch. We'll face it if it comes, she said. Over the following months, they settled into a new normal. Zachary was more open about his limitations. If he was tired, he said so. If he needed to rest, he rested. Zara adjusted her expectations, and they found a rhythm that worked for both of them. The new studio space became their shared project. Zachary handled the business side, negotiating with contractors and dealing with permits, while Zara designed the layout and planned the programming. They worked side by side, and Zachary found as much satisfaction in building this with Zara as he ever had in developing major commercial properties. The grand opening was in June, a year after Zachary had first walked into Zara's original studio. The space was beautiful, filled with light and lined with wheels and work tables. Zara had named it Centered Studios, and there was a line of people waiting to sign up for classes. We did it, Zara said, looking around at the crowded space. You did it, Zachary corrected. I just helped. No. We did it together. That's how this works now. In August, on their one-year anniversary, Zachary took Zara back to the coast, to the same bed and breakfast where they had stayed before. They walked on the beach at sunset, and Zachary felt his heart pounding in a way that had nothing to do with his condition. Zara, he said, stopping and turning to face her. This year with you has been the best year of my life. You've taught me what actually matters. Not money or success, but connection and love and living each day fully. Zachary, what are you doing? He pulled a small box from his pocket and dropped to one knee in the sand. I'm asking you to marry me. I can't promise you 50 years, but I can promise you every single day I have. I'll love you completely, honestly, with everything I am. Will you marry me? Zara was crying, but she was also smiling. Yes, of course, yes. The ring was simple, an emerald surrounded by small diamonds, the green reminding him of the first mug he had ever bought from her. She loved it. They were married 3 months later in a small ceremony at the studio, surrounded by friends and family. Zara's parents cried happy tears. Jake gave a speech about how Zachary had proven him wrong, had been exactly what his sister needed. Marcus, Zachary's business partner, made a toast about how love had made his friend finally understand work-life balance. For their honeymoon, they went to Japan, visiting pottery studios and temples, eating incredible food and getting lost in cities where neither of them spoke the language. It was perfect. Back in Portland, they settled into married life. Zara moved into Zachary's house officially, though they spent plenty of time at the studio too. Zachary continued to manage his condition carefully, and while there were bad days, there were far more good ones. In their second year of marriage, Dr. Matthews delivered good news. Zachary's condition had stabilized significantly. The medication was working better than expected, and his prognosis had improved. "Keep doing what you're doing," Dr. Matthews said. "The lifestyle changes, the stress reduction, it's all helping." "He means you're helping," Zachary told Zara later. "You saved my life." "You saved your own life," Zara said. "I just gave you a reason to do it." They talked about children, a conversation that was complicated by Zachary's condition and the uncertainty it brought. But Zara was determined. "I want to build a family with you," she said. "However that looks. If we can have biological children, great. If we need to adopt, that's fine too. But I want kids and I want them with you." They started trying, and 6 months later, Zara came home from the studio with a pregnancy test and tears in her eyes. "We're going to have a baby," she said. Zachary held her, overwhelmed with emotions he couldn't name. Joy and fear and hope all mixed together. The pregnancy was normal and healthy. Zara glowed, continuing to work at the studio until she was 8 months along, when even she had to admit that throwing pottery with a huge belly was becoming impractical. Their daughter was born on a rainy April morning, perfect and tiny and screaming. They named her Lily, and Zachary fell in love all over again. Watching Zara with their daughter, seeing the way she held Lily with such tenderness and strength, Zachary was grateful every single day that he had walked into that pottery studio. Grateful that Zara had forgiven his terrible mistake. Grateful for every moment they had together. When Lily was 6 months old, they had a scare. Zachary collapsed at work and an ambulance rushed him to the hospital. Zara met him there, Lily in her arms, her face pale. "It was just a reaction to a new medication," Dr. Matthews explained. "His heart is fine, actually better than expected. We just need to adjust his prescription." But the scare reminded them both how fragile life could be. "I can't lose you," Zara said that night, lying in the hospital bed beside him while a nurse held Lily in the hallway. "You won't. Not yet. Not for a long time." Zachary kissed her forehead. "I'm going to be here to watch Lily grow up. Going to be here to make lopsided pottery with you when we're old. Going to be here." And remarkably, as years passed, that seemed to be true. The medication continued to work. Zachary's condition remained stable. He had regular monitoring and adjustments, but he was living a full life. Lily grew from a baby into a toddler with her mother's eyes and her father's stubborn determination. She loved the studio, playing with clay while her mother worked, creating messy sculptures that Zachary displayed proudly in his office. When Lily was 3, they expanded the studio again, adding a section specifically for children's classes. It was a huge success, and soon they were running programs for kids of all ages. "Remember when you said you were terrible at pottery?" Zara teased one afternoon, watching Zachary teach a class to 5-year-olds. "I am terrible at pottery. But I'm great at teaching other people to be terrible at pottery." "You're great at a lot of things. Most importantly, you're great at being here, being present, being you." On their 5th wedding anniversary, Zachary and Zara renewed their vows at the beach where he had proposed. Lily was their flower girl, taking her job very seriously, carefully dropping petals along the sand. "5 years ago, I asked you to marry me not knowing what the future held," Zachary said. "Today, I know exactly what I'm promising you. A lifetime of love, of partnership, of facing whatever comes together. You took a chance on me, on us, and I will spend every day earning that trust." "You already have," Zara said. "You've given me everything I never knew I needed. A partner, a family, a life filled with love and purpose. I would choose you again every single day." They kissed as the sun set over the ocean, their daughter clapping and cheering, and Zachary knew he was the luckiest man alive. More years passed. Lily started school. Zachary and Zara opened a second studio location. His business continued to thrive, though Zachary had learned to delegate and prioritize what actually mattered. They took family vacations, spent weekends at the coast, hosted holidays at their house. Dr. Matthews retired, and a new cardiologist took over Zachary's care. The new doctor was impressed with how well Zachary had managed his condition. "I've seen a lot of cases like yours," she said. "And the patients who do best are the ones with strong support systems and reasons to live. You clearly have both." When Lily was 7, she asked why her daddy had to go to the doctor so much. Zachary sat her down and explained in age-appropriate terms about his heart condition. "But you're okay, right?" Lily asked, her eyes worried. "I'm okay," Zachary assured her. "The doctors help me stay healthy and I take good care of myself. I'm going to be here for a long time." "Good. Because I need you to teach me how to make pottery that doesn't fall apart." Zachary laughed. "That's your mother's department. I only know how to make pottery that does fall apart." By the time Lily was 10, Zachary had been living with his diagnosis for 12 years. 12 years that he had once feared he might not have. 12 years of love and family and purpose. He stood in the studio one evening, watching Zara teach a class while Lily did her homework at a table in the corner. This was his life. Not the empire he had built or the money in his accounts, but this. The woman he loved, the daughter they had created together, the space where art and community intersected. Zara caught him staring and smiled. "What are you thinking about? How grateful I am for all of this. For you." "Come here," she said, gesturing him over. "Help me demonstrate this technique." Zachary joined her at the wheel and she guided his hands on the clay, just like she had on that first lesson so many years ago. His technique had improved marginally, but he still wasn't very good. It didn't matter. This wasn't about creating perfect pottery. It was about being here in this moment with the people who made life worth living. That night, after Lily was asleep, Zachary and Zara sat on their back patio, looking out at the city lights. "Do you ever regret it?" Zachary asked. "Staying with me after I told you about the diagnosis? Taking on all that uncertainty?" "Never," Zara said without hesitation. "Life is uncertain for everyone. At least we faced ours with our eyes open. And look at what we built together. Look at our daughter, our studios, our life." "How could I regret any of that?" "I love you," Zachary said. "More than I have words for." "Show me instead," Zara said, taking his hand and leading him inside. As years continued to pass, Zachary remained stable. There were scares occasionally, adjustments to medication, but overall, he was living a full, healthy life. The doctors called it remarkable. Zachary called it a gift. He watched Lily grow into a teenager, passionate about art like her mother but also interested in business like her father. She talked about maybe taking over the studio someday, expanding even further. "You've built something amazing," she told her parents. "I want to be part of continuing that." Zachary and Zara looked at each other, pride evident on both their faces. On their 15th wedding anniversary, they returned once again to the beach. It had become their tradition, coming back to the place where Zachary had proposed, renewing their commitment to each other. 15 years, Zara said, walking hand in hand with him along the water's edge. "When you proposed here, part of me was terrified we wouldn't make it this long. And now I know we'll make it as long as we're meant to, whether that's another 15 years or 50. Every day with you is a gift." "I thought honesty arrived too late," Zachary said. "That's what I told myself when I was hiding the diagnosis from you, that by the time I told you the truth, we would have lost too much time." "But it didn't," Zara said. "You told me. It was hard and we struggled, but you told me. And we got to build all of this because you were finally honest." "Honesty arrived just in time," Zachary agreed. "Just in time to save what mattered most." They stood there as the sun set, the same view as 15 years before, but everything different. They were older, stronger, more certain of what they meant to each other. "Let's go home," Zara said finally. "Lily is making us an anniversary dinner, and you know how she gets if we're late. She gets that from you. She gets everything good from me. All her stubborn, difficult parts are definitely from you." They laughed, walking back to the car, their hands still intertwined. Home was warm and bright, filled with the smell of whatever Lily was cooking. Their daughter had set the table with the pottery Zara had made for Zachary years ago, the blue-green pieces that had started everything. They ate together, the three of them, talking and laughing. Lily told stories about school, about her friends, about the pottery class she was teaching to younger kids at the studio. Zara talked about a new glaze she was experimenting with. Zachary shared news about a property development that would bring affordable housing to a neighborhood that needed it. This was the life Zachary had thought he would never have. A family, a home filled with love, purpose beyond profit. He had been so afraid that his diagnosis would take everything from him, but instead, it had led him exactly where he needed to be. That night, lying in bed beside Zara, Zachary thought about the journey that had brought them here. From that first day walking into her studio to this moment, every step had been worth it. The fear, the mistakes, the vulnerability of loving someone completely. "What are you thinking about so hard over there?" Zara asked, turning to face him. "I can practically hear the gears turning. Just thinking about how different my life could have been if I hadn't walked into your studio that day, if you hadn't forgiven me for hiding the truth. If we hadn't taken the risk of building something together knowing the future was uncertain." "The future is always uncertain," Zara said. "That's what makes it interesting. We just happen to know it more explicitly than most people. You're very wise. I'm very in love with you. That makes the wisdom easier." Zachary pulled her closer. "I'm going to grow old with you. Promise, promise. The doctors say my condition is as managed as it can be. I'm planning on decades more of this. Decades of waking up next to you, of teaching terrible pottery classes, of watching Lily become whoever she's meant to be." "That sounds perfect," Zara said. They fell asleep tangled together, the way they had been for 15 years, the way they planned to be for many more. The truth was, Zachary's diagnosis had saved his life in more ways than one. It had forced him to reevaluate what mattered, to step away from the all-consuming work that had been slowly killing him in different ways. It had led him to Zara, to love, to a life rich with meaning and connection. And yes, he had hidden the truth from her at first, had been terrified that honesty would arrive too late, that he would have wasted precious time hiding behind fear. But in the end, honesty had arrived exactly when it needed to, just in time to save not minutes or hours, but years. A lifetime of years, built on truth and trust and love that refused to be limited by diagnosis or fear. As morning light filtered through their bedroom window, Zachary woke to find Zara already awake, watching him with a soft smile. "Good morning," she said. "Good morning." "How long have you been awake?" "A few minutes. I was just watching you sleep, thinking about how lucky I am." "I'm the lucky one. We're both lucky," Zara said. "Lucky we found each other. Lucky we were brave enough to stay. Lucky we have this beautiful life." From down the hall, they heard Lily moving around, getting ready for school. "Another day," Zachary said. "Another perfect day," Zara agreed. They got up together, ready to face whatever this day and all the days after would bring, knowing that they would face it side by side, honest and open and completely in love. Years later, when Lily had her own daughter and brought her to meet her grandparents, Zachary held the tiny baby and marveled at how life continued, how love multiplied, how the choice to be honest and vulnerable had created this entire world of family and connection. "Tell me again how you and Grandma met," Lily said, the same request she had made countless times throughout her childhood. So Zachary told the story once more, about walking into a pottery studio looking for peace and finding everything he never knew he needed. About falling in love with a woman who taught him that life was about being present, not planning for futures that might never come. About making the mistake of hiding the truth and the grace of being forgiven. About building a life together one honest moment at a time. "That's so romantic," Lily's daughter, barely 20, said. "It is," Zachary agreed, looking at Zara across the room where she was organizing pottery supplies for the children's class she still taught even in her 60s. "It really is." Zara caught his eye and smiled, that same smile that had caught his attention all those years ago in the studio window. She walked over, kissed his cheek, and took the baby from his arms with the practiced ease of someone who had held many babies over many years. "What were you telling them?" She asked. "Our story. It's a good story. It's the best story," Zachary said, "and we're still writing it." "Every single day," Zara agreed. They stood there together, surrounded by family, by the life they had built, by all the love that had grown from that first moment of connection in a small pottery studio in Portland. Zachary's heart, that tricky organ that had caused so much fear and changed everything, beat steadily in his chest. He had spent so many years terrified that honesty would arrive too late, that he would waste precious time hiding behind fear and secrets. But standing here now, healthy and whole and surrounded by love, he understood the truth. Honesty had arrived exactly when it needed to. Not too late, not too early, but just in time to save what mattered most, time itself. And every moment of it had been worth living.